Hey man, really great thoughts. Um, you got my mind really rolling here. It's interesting. Speaking of Yao Ming and China, he was an '80s baby certainly, but Chinese, the socio-political situation in China in the '80s was a little different than in America. So there's, a good explanation for why '80s babies from China are a bit different than '80s babies from America. But speaking of China, um, the Taoists are always using water as the metaphor for the flowing of the Tao. Um, you'll find it throughout the Tao Te Ching, and Chuang Tzu is always talking about the Tao in relation to water. And it is the age of Aquarius, right? And Aquarius is the water bearer. So it seems fitting that what is required of us in this new age is moving out of the metaphysics of separation and duality and materialism of discrete separate structures, um, a metaphysic of identity, into this more Eastern flowing ontology where everything is interrelated and connected, and it's relationship that gives rise to individuality, not the other way around as we typically have assumed for so long in the Western context. So it is a little unique coincidence there between the Age of Aquarius and Taoism. Um, you said that, or you mentioned Buddhism, and you characterized it as a sort of a Peter Pan philosophy that if there is no ego, we may as well think happy thoughts, right? And that's the distinction I think that's important. It's not that Buddhism says we must get rid of the ego. Buddhism says look closely and see if you can find the ego, and you don't. Uh, Usually, the thing we think the ego is, as this like thing or substance, is just that emotion associated with frustration, with aggravation, with the need for revenge and the feeling of separation and alienation and isolation from others. That's what we thought or think of as the ego. It's just that type of thought, that type of alienating thought. But if you look at that thought, you see that it is just a thought. It's not the thinker. So Buddhism is just a call to explore our phenomenological experience, not to get rid of an ego, but to discover it was never there to begin with. That's why, enlightenment seems to be realizing what you always already knew, but just seeing it for the first time. Um, you're not getting rid of something, you're not finding something new, you're just realizing where you already are, where you always have been, and where you always will be. And that is in this shared space among others, other human beings, other animals, other life. Um, and you were talking about Swedenborg and how his idea of heaven was that it's this evolving process, that God itself is evolving, um, and that seems to fit the situation that we're in. Um, if you think of God as, yeah, maybe something transcendental, but also as something immanent, as the very process of the unfolding of the material world that we live in, you can see that, the evolution of life on Earth has a tendency to increase in complexity. Not that humans are somehow higher or greater or better than the rest of life on the planet. It's a web, it's not a strict ladder or hierarchy. Um, but in a sense, not that human consciousness is better or more important or anything, but certainly it is capable of more complex um, interactions with its environment and more complex experiences. Uh, but the thing is, we shouldn't assign this deeper complexity to the brain itself. The brain is part of this larger fractal system that goes all the way down to the neural, um, the molecular, the atomic, the subatomic, and presumably keeps going forever, and all the way up to the ecosystem, the society, the culture that we're embedded in, the planet, the solar system, the galaxy, the supercluster, and presumably out as far as infinity. So we're embedded in this larger fractal that has no beginning and no ending. Um, so to say that it's the brain that makes us special is a little misleading. It's the brain and the context of the brain, and as I said before, and as you were saying, there are no separations. There are distinctions to be made galore, but no separations. You can distinguish something only because of its context, the way it is related to everything else. And you said that 2012 may be the end of solitude. But I wonder if you really meant solitude or the end of loneliness. Because, typically solitude is being empowered by your sense of wholeness as an individual, and loneliness is longing for connection to others, which, if 2012 is about this planetary consciousness emerging, then what it would be some kind of solidarity between all beings, or at least all humans, but I would hope all beings, all creatures, all life on the planet. Solidarity, not loneliness. So, you also brought up Dr. Emoto's water crystals. And, I've read into this, and a lot of scientists criticize his method, and he's not very open about how exactly he goes about doing this. And he has admitted that he tells his researchers who take the photographs of the crystals to find the best example in each water sample. So, the way I look at this is, it could be true. I wouldn't be surprised, but we shouldn't base or we shouldn't use this experiment as the linchpin in this new age where mind and matter become more implicated and interconnected. We don't need this experiment to be true to know that it is mind that makes matter move, as you quoted Virgil as saying. So, yeah, Dr. Emoto's stuff is interesting, but we don't need that, and we shouldn't rest our case on that experiment, because it very well could be proven wrong. And then, does that mean that everything we've suggested that is implied by that experiment is therefore also wrong? So we have to be careful with that. You brought up this question of why we should have ever been physically incarnated to begin with. And you brought up how Aquarius is sort of obsessed by the limitations of the body. It wants to transcend. It wants to be its abstractions. And I wonder if the body is really a limit. Maybe spirit, to fully understand what it means to love, needed to be a body, a physical body that is born and that dies, that is, impermanent, always passing away. Maybe that's the situation it takes to really truly love, to experience the ultimate bliss that this creation, this universe, this cosmos is capable of producing. Maybe being a spiritual being with infinite abilities and being in heaven isn't the most blissful and wonderful experience open to the universe. Maybe incarnation is the most beautiful. Maybe. But I'm running out of time. Thanks for your thoughts. I really appreciated them. So we'll be in touch, I suppose.